Once upon a time, in the magical land called England, reigned a noble king, Edward III of the Plantagenet dynasty. Upon his death, his family was split into two branches. His fourth son would spawn the Lancastrians, and the fifth son would spawn the House of York. The names would come from the duchies they ruled over. It's not that hard. Through some shenanigans, the Lancasters would actually get the throne. I don't really feel like going over it now, but that is just the story. And up until the reign of Henry V, only wholesome stuff would happen in England. Don't look it up. If we ignore all the bad stuff that happened and skip a couple chapters, everything was wholesome. The year is 1420, and the noble king of England, Henry V, has basically managed to beat the French by forcing them to sign a treaty making him the heir apparent to the French throne. Him being a young guy, there's nothing that, he could do to mess this up. At the age of 34, he had forged an empire, that would make Alexander blush. All he needed to do was wait for the French king to die. Yo, hold on, this guy's not waking up. Wait a second, even Charles isn't waking up. They're both dead. At least Henry has an heir though, right? Like, bro, come on, it's a freaking baby. Look at my heir, dog. They really let a baby be crowned both King of England and France, and I can't legally own a horse in my neighborhood, bro. My suburban neighborhood won't allow it. Not only is this world unjust, it is cruel. King Charles' son, Charles VII, a reaper of this cruel, horseless suburban world, did not acknowledge the Treaty of Tours. The French were reinvigorated and finally started to get some much-needed victories. The English tried to get a peace treaty with France by marrying Henry VI to Charles's niece, the Duchess of Anjou, Margaret. Margaret, I don't know why that's funny to say. The treaty didn't work out, but Henry is married to a bad bitch, man. Honestly, I can't blame him for losing France, man. He had his mind on more important matters, that's it. He was on a professional level, and he let his wife, work her bad ways through court. England was losing territory left and right in France, and one of the guys responsible for the loss of land, well, he was promoted to chief minister. This man being the Duke of Somerset, Edmund Beaufort. He was a puppet of the Queen. The Duke of York, Richard, felt this was an embarrassment to England and offered his services to the king. Richard had his offer refused, and this angered the Queen because, he tried to fire her guy. The Duke of York was forced basically to go back to his holdings while the Queen of England kind of, weaved her fingers through the lands. After walking all the way back to York, Richard staged a revolt against the Queen, but because the king, he didn't really want to revolt, he asked them, what if we settled this? And then the Duke of York was like, okay, smiley face. They didn't settle it, but he dropped his army down, so I guess he was kind of a loser. He raised all of his levies just to get immediately blackpilled. Couldn't be me. With the Duke of York taken care of, the Queen, all she needed was a son to secure her power over England. Yeah, being the future Queen Mother of the King of England, yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, that'll secure your power. Yeah, I can't fault the logic in it, but unfortunately, before the birth of her son, King Henry would finally take a look at the map and see his country and realize how much land he's actually lost in such a small amount of time. He would go into an anti-dopamine trance, unable to act as king. The King of England was already an armchair general, but now he was a bedside king. All I'm saying, the dude was sitting there in a trance with his wife sitting there next to him. It was a serious situation if she didn't wake him up. That's all I'm saying. Whilst he was in a trance, the council voted the Duke of York to be acting regent while Henry was slept. The Duke made quick work fixing the mess that Somerset had created, but to BH, anyone could have done a better job than Somerset, meaning this probably really got to the Duke of York's head here. He truly believed he was the one who had to save England. But before he could finish his work, the King of England had awoken from his trance. As soon as he awoken, the Duke of York fled to his holdings once again, knowing that Somerset would regain his power and feared the Queen's army of simps would come for their revenge. He mustered his armies and his good friend, the Earl of Warwick, to kill the weak Somerset to prevent him from enacting the Queen's Lancastrian revenge. The Yorks would meet the King's army at St. Albans, and they'd have a fight, and then the Yorks would win, and they'd capture and execute Somerset. Like, bro, like, he surrendered. That was kind of taboo. But at the battle, they captured King Henry. But Henry would fall bedside again because, he got sick, leaving the Duke of York as his protectorate. Now that the king is out of the picture again, I can finally begin to fix this country once more, especially now that the rat Somerset is dead. He's right behind me, isn't he? Now Henry VI was in control once again, and his mission was to spread love. He had a bad wife and a son and heir, but he needed a country that wasn't trying to actively kidnap him every few months. Everything was going quite well actually, until the Queen decided to brand the Earl of Warwick as a traitor. I mean, he might have been privateering and stuff, but I mean, come on. A man's gotta hustle. I think the response might have been overblown. The Earl of Warwick would flee to Calais, and the Yorks would raise another army just because they can. But this time, Henry had had enough of these shenanigans, and he brought an actual army this time, instead of a few pubmates. The Duke of York, seeing that he was going to have to face an actual army this time, decided to flee to Ireland, aka CK2 Tutorial Island. Now all the Yorkists were branded as traitors and all their nice stuff was confiscated. In response, the Earl of Warwick would lead an attack on the capital, and the people just kind of like let him in. Like, I guess King Henry VI was not a very popular king at the time. He may in fact have been a bad king. After defeating the Lancastrian armies in Northampton, could you believe it? They actually captured King Henry again. This dude must not even try. Like, how does he get captured so much? Like, he's probably not in the battle. He's like probably collecting flowers in the field next door. And when the Yorks win, they just kind of pick him up like daycare when they're done with the battle. Now that the Yorks are in control once more, the Duke of York decides that, you know, he's not gonna just run the country for the king anymore. Nah, he's gonna become the king. He couldn't really read a room though, so he settled on being the heir to the throne. Even though the ages were kind of weird, but you know, it's better than nothing. It wouldn't really matter though, because Queen Margaret would event spawn an army of Scottish simps and they'd kill him. The Duke of York was really killed by a medieval e-girl at the Battle of Wakefield. Luckily for the Duke of York, his son Edward IV was with Warwick in the south. They managed to beat the Lancasters and send both Henry and Margaret and her simp squad back to Scotland. And sometime later on along the line, Henry was captured while skulking around, cripwalking in the northern countryside, and was imprisoned and put in the Tower of London. Now Edward IV was King of England. All this thanks to his best friend Warwick, who kind of became a kingmaker in a way. He gets called the kingmaker. All this because he proved his loyalty to the Yorks and he helped them get the English crown. Now all King Edward had to do was not mess everything up and not screw over his greatest friend and ally. Come on, bro, please. Don't do anything stupid. This video is almost like 8 minutes long. Please. Yo, dog, I got you this, like, bad Italian bitch. She's, like, bad, dog. Yo, that's cool, but 5 months ago, I got married to this, divorced chick with 2 kids. I'm not, like, a stepdad. I'm, like, the dad who stepped up, you know? Bro, you really gonna embarrass me in front of the Italians for some divorced pussy? Bro, my wife is literally on the line right now. Edward had married Elizabeth Woodville, a house that was kind of obscure, you know, But with Elizabeth's marriage to the king, catapulted them into the center of power in England. She got to quick work planting her family in high positions of power in the country, strategically marrying off her family members like a girdling around the York family tree. The Woodvilles had replaced Warwick as the right-hand man of the king. Warwick was blackpilled once more once the Woodvilles convinced Edward to cozy up to the Burgundians, whilst Warwick was sent to go and start a trade deal with France. After Edward had embarrassed him 2 times and then refused to marry his daughter to the king's brother, Warwick started plotting his revenge against the Woodvilles. Warwick and the king's brother left to plot, while conveniently, a rebellion against the Woodvilles' corruption sprung up in the north of the country. The rebellion turned out to be a ploy to lure out King Edward and capture him, which Warwick and them did. Now that Warwick was in control, he really didn't know what to do because he didn't really expect to get this far, so he just killed all the Woodvilles. He didn't kill the king's wife though, just most of her family. Once he killed them all, he just kind of let Edward free, but he apologized after killing his wife's whole family. So, I mean, I understand why Edward forgave him. After he forgave him, well, I guess what? What do you think's gonna happen? Yeah, that's right, Warwick started another rebellion, like, what did he think was gonna happen? After his little rebellion was crushed, he fled to France, and he met up with Queen Margaret from earlier. This is where Warwick got the genius idea to restore Henry VI back to the throne of England. I mean, you could really tell he was run out of options at this point. The new Lancastrian forces set sail, and they actually managed to beat the Yorks, and they take the crown. Now back in charge, King Henry VI had to hear court and do other boring king stuff. Yeah, now I see why he had other people do this stuff for him. Some random NPC named Henry Tudor and his mother Lady Margaret Beaufort even came to seek an audience with him. They're really out here wasting a king's time while he's on his grind set. Edward, after fleeing the crown, has now come back with his armies to beat Warwick, the kingmaker, once and for all. But sadly, Edward is outnumbered by the Lancastrian forces. Wait, never mind. The Lancastrian forces are attacking each other in confusion. This really is a Vine Boom sound effect moment for Warwick. Warwick was slain in the battlefield, and so was Henry VI's son. Now the survival of the Lancastrian bloodline is up to Henry VI. Wait, never mind. He died in a dungeon 2 weeks later. So that's it. Edward's got the crown, got the girl, and all the opposition is dead. It's all smooth sailing from here. Up in the north, on the edge of civilization, stood one man between England and the invading Scottish forces. Richard III was a hero to all of England, and so it was no surprise that his brother Edward IV would call upon him to rule the country and prepare his son, Edward V, for his coronation and future rule. The problem is, the two have never really met, and it's been the Woodvilles who've been the ones raising Edward IV's children. Now when Richard tries to approach the young 12-year-old future king, it's Richard comes up with a grand plan of arresting the kid's tutor and locking up Edward V in the Tower of London. After kidnapping the King of England, he announces to the royal council that he would rule as regent until Edward was crowned. They kind of accepted it, but the kicker was, in a few days, Edward would be crowned king regardless. The council used this fact to veto every law Richard tried to pass. He would need to show the council that he was in control if he as an outsider wanted to survive in the court. And he killed a noble. I mean, sure man, you do what you gotta do. I guess it worked out for him. I mean, the council, they started passing his laws and he managed to push back the king's coronation. But the king's younger brother was still hiding with his mother. Wait, he just kidnapped him. Okay, well, Richard's on a roll. He's really taking care of business. I can't blame him for hustling. His plan now was to claim himself king instead of those two Woodville puppets. Remember when Edward IV was supposed to marry that Italian princess? Well, he said he'd marry her, but instead he married Elizabeth Woodville, and through some, overly technical mental gymnastics of technicalities, it basically meant that his marriage to Elizabeth was not void, and the kids, they'd be bastards, leaving Richard to be the only legitimate York heir. I mean, no one really believed him, but like, everyone just kind of went with it because he already killed someone. Guy Boss really out here making moves to secure the crown. Now that the two brothers were imprisoned and disinherited, he was free to claim the crown of England. The coronation went on without a hitch, but Richard was still paranoid that the Woodvilles would try to usurp his crown. My king, the two little princes have gone missing. Okay. You know I'm like an innocent guy boss, and like, force now, if I did do it, playing devil's advocate here, you're telling me I sent two of my most loyal goons to slip into the Tower of London at exactly 20:41 p.m. at night, open the 6th door on the left where they're being held and hack them to death with Type 18 longswords, and then slip out of the room without the 20 guards noticing? Like, okay, buddy. Yeah, okay, sounds reasonable to me. Richard might have been king, but he was widely unpopular and believed to have killed his two nephews, allegedly. There's no proof that he did it, because they vanished without a trace, but I mean, come on man, if they're yeah, he didn't do it. The nobles at court were plotting a way to get rid of Richard III, mostly because they were afraid he was going to kill them too. This is when Henry Tudor comes back into play. So remember that NPC from earlier? Yeah, it turns out he was an actual player character the whole time. With all the Lancasters being dead and Richard killing his whole family, anyone with a weak claim can basically have a chance to inherit. Henry's claim was pretty dodgy at best, but you know, he hasn't killed any children. I think the nobles were willing to give him a chance. To strengthen his claim, Henry's mother arranged him a marriage with one of Edward IV's daughters, one of the few remaining Yorks, to give him some needed legitimacy. Now all he needed to do was push his claim. Yo, never mind dude, his boats got lost at sea. Can't have nothing in the English Channel. Eventually Henry would land in Wales, and this is where all the fun begins. Henry's forces were outnumbered, but his father-in-law's men, they were watching the battle in the back over there. Look at him. Henry's father-in-law was Thomas Stanley, the Earl of Derby, and he was appointed steward by Richard. And he was conflicted about which side he was going to take in this battle. The Tudor forces were getting crushed with Henry Tudor in the thick of the fighting. It was looking like the Yorks were about to win, when suddenly the Stanleys charged into the Yorks, killing Richard III in a melee. With Richard's death, the War of the Roses was over this time, for good. And I mean it this time, it's good. It's over. With House Lancaster and House York basically dead, it's now up to House Tudor to mend the country together. And now we get like a cool little rose insignia. Henry really was a larper. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched The White Queen. I know nothing about that show. I'm just trying to get my demographics up. That's what girls like, right? They watch this show?